So let's finish up this build. I will clean up the cockpit by taping down both the Di2 cables and brake hoses. I'll start with the Di2 cable coming from the end of the bar up to the shift lever. I will tape this down to the outside of the drop. You won't feel it too much actually once you put on some bar tape, but it will give some extra girth to the bar, which suits me because I have quite long fingers, thin but long. Of course, you can tape them down on the inside of the drop as well if that would suit your hands more, but like I said, it doesn't make that big of a difference. I don't want the cables to move at all underneath the bar tape, so I'm gonna be pretty thorough while taping it down. And I just leave a slight bit of slack up at the connector, so it's actually possible to disconnect the cable without like pulling too much on the tape. For the top of the bars, I will tape both the brake hose and the Di2 cable together. The brake hoses are pretty stiff, so I will tape them thoroughly all the way up to where I think my bar tape would end, basically. Just to make sure they don't move around when you turn the handlebars. Here you can also see one of the mistakes I did. I actually cut the front brake hose a bit too short. I always ended up feeling I had left too much, so I really wanted to try to get it perfect this time, and in the end I made it just a tad bit too short. Not the end of the world, since it doesn't actually stretch when you turn the bars. It's not that big of a problem, but I couldn't really wrap the bar tape as far up as I wanted to, so I will probably change this eventually, but for now it will have to do. So wrapping the handlebar tape when you use the bar end junction might be a bit confusing in the beginning, but yeah, this is how I did it. Firstly, install the junction with the holder that comes with the junction. And then I secure that with some decent double-sided tape. Cut it to length. Make sure the junction is secure. And then I'll cut the bar tape the same way you would do at the top of the bars. You might have to trim it to make it as neat as you possibly can. That's about right for me. Remove the tape cover and wrap it around the junction holder. And from there you just continue on as I usually do when wrapping bars. And if you feel you messed up, just go back. Usually the tape can take a few unwraps and rewraps. For me, I like to have some girth around the handlebars or the levers, so I will wrap my bars with a figure 8. It will add some bulk. That's just how I prefer to have it. The only problem if you do the figure 8 is that it could mean that you run out of bar tape before you reach the end of the bar, but in this case it was just long enough for me to end up where I wanted, but I didn't have any left over. So something to think about. I'll end the wrap like I started it, basically by cutting it diagonally at the end, so I will get a nice and clean straight ending to the wrap. In my opinion, you should always finish your wrap with electrical tape, and after you put the electrical tape on, you could use the finishing tape that comes with the bar tape. I never do because I don't think it looks very nice. I went a bit overboard here. I actually got some tape that's half the width just to get it a bit extra nice and tidy. I always put the electrical tape just on the bar tape and never overlap it to the actual bar. A couple of wraps with this has been good enough for me, and I'll never have any problem with bar tape coming off. I do change my bar tape about once a season though, so after that I just wrap the other side. You could use the dummy end cap that looks the same as the handlebar junction. I couldn't be bothered with that this time, so I'm wrapping it the traditional way with a bar end plug, just because I'm lazy, I guess. And yeah, like I said, if you're not happy with the wrap, unwrap it and start over again. Better to have a nice and neat wrap job then. The last step to the cockpit is to shrink the tube around the brake hose and Di2 cable. As you can see here, I kind of messed up again and cut the shrink tube a bit too short. I don't really know what I was thinking here, but yeah. Unfortunately, I had already attached the hose to the shift lever. And to change the shrink hose, it would mean I would have to cut the hose, which in turn would have meant the hose would have been too short. So I have to live with this mistake as well. We'll also put on the bottle cages. One good thing about this opening is the bottle mounts are very low on the frame. This is perfect if you go bike packing, for example, then you can have a half frame bag and still be able to remove your bottles without much trouble. However, if you use the Arundel mandible cages like I do, you have two holes, so you can have them in two positions. I always try to mount them as slow as possible, but in this case, when I had both on the lower holes, putting the bottles in the cages, they actually touched each other, so I couldn't put them all the way down in the cage. Another problem I found actually after the first ride is that the bottle cage on the down tube in the lower mounting position of this cage actually just makes the bottle touch the down tube, which is not really optimal. So might be one thing to think about if you have the same cages as I have. Then it's time to put the pedals on. Yeah, putting on pedals is like putting on anything else. Grease the threads and make sure the threads are clean as well. And yeah, just use a pedal wrench to tighten them down. Only thing you need to remember is the threads are reversed on the non-drive side, but I bet you already knew that. Here I'm actually using the speed plate pedals. I think I wanted to see how light I could end up getting this build. I have since changed my pedals to my XT mountain bike pedals. They're much more useful for the kind of ride I'm doing, especially when you're on gravel and you have cameras with you and you want to get off the bike and take photos and stuff like that. So for me, the mountain bike pedals are much better choice. Of course, if you're racing, that's a whole nother story. So the last step here is getting my position correctly. I took all the measurements for my old bike. I was pretty happy with that. So first I will just set my saddle height. To set the saddle setback correctly, I simply put the bike with the back wheel against the wall. Took one measurement from the center of the bottom bracket back to the wall. Then from the end of my saddle back to the wall again. And the difference between those measurements will be my saddle setback. So I had this measurement first taken from my old bike. And now I just need to make sure it's the same measurement on the new one. I actually ended up selling this Pro Stealth saddle and going back to my old trusty Pro Logo saddle that I have been using since 2012. There might be a new chapter in the Saddle Chronicles coming up though. I'll be sure to make a video about that in the future. Speaking of saddle setback, some of you might know that the Open is actually designed for non-offset seat posts, which this MV seat post is not. My reasoning here is I actually always run a lot of setback on my bikes. Usually even with this 2.5 centimeter setback seat post, I had the saddle slammed all the way back almost. So my thinking here is I can get the same position as my older bikes with this setback seat post and have the rails just in the middle of the clamp, which would look much nicer if nothing else. If I would have a non-offset seat post here, I would have to slam the saddle all the way back, which is not the best look. So I decided to stick with my old seat post here. And once the position is dialed in, that means this build is finished. I hope you have enjoyed this little mini series. It's been very fun to do. Of course, having a new bike is always fun. Already done a couple of rides, and first impressions are it's definitely lighter. It's a better climbing bike, and it's a bit snappier in the downhills, which is good for us because we climb a lot and descend a lot. The wheelbase is a bit shorter, so it definitely feels a bit more livelier. The other side of the coin there is it's not as stable on gravel or rough stuff, but still not a problem or anything. So very happy with the bike this far. There's still a few components that will change. Like I said, I already changed the saddle. I will also put a new stem on here, since this frame has about 9 millimeters more reach than my old bike. We'll for sure see it featured more in upcoming videos, but for now, that's it. I got more stuff coming up, so stay tuned, subscribe if you feel like it, and whoa, it's steep. One hand.